Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by onlinegreatbooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to the Online Great Books podcast. This is Brett. I am the producer, and first, I'll apologize for our long absence. Scott took us all to Europe for 8 weeks, 9 weeks maybe? I don't know. Whenever the date of the last show was, that was the day we left, and we just got back today. What a trip. Of course, I'm just kidding. There isn't money for that. I don't even know if there's a Europe anymore. I'm sure the land is still there. I don't know what's going on. So I'll tell you a little bit about what happened. Scott and I talked at the end of July, and I was getting ready to release the second installment in Scott and Karl's discussion of Dean Koontz's thriller, Odd Thomas. Scott said he was planning to take August off, so I said, okay, why don't we sit on part 2 of Odd Thomas for a while, at least until we're ready to get started again. And originally it was going to be about 5 weeks, and that turned into 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks, and here we are. And there are some changes coming to the podcast schedule. All I'm going to say right now is there are going to be longer but less frequent shows. Scott and Karl will join me soon to tell you more about what is happening with the podcast and with Online Great Books. So you've waited long enough, or, you might be listening to this at some point way in the future. And, when you finished episode 168, you found this episode 169 right there waiting for you. And you're like, does this guy ever shut up talking about God knows what? I loved episode 168, and now I've been waiting almost 2 whole minutes for episode 169 to start. So we'll get going. For those of you who did wait 2 months, again, we apologize for the long break. More news is coming soon. For now, here's Scott and Karl continuing from right where they left off. You might want to go back and listen to part 1 again, but they continue right where they left off, discussing Dean Koontz's Odd Thomas. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your time and attention. Here we go.
I love that. Elvis is important. His boss says that one of the reasons that she was obsessed with Elvis, quote, one reason Elvis matters, she said, was that in his prime, pop music still had been politically innocent, therefore deeply life-affirming, therefore relevant.
Yeah. This is the sort of thing that I thought this was a Scott Hambrick book. You just don't know it yet because you hadn't read it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Pop music should be politically innocent, which doesn't mean that it won't be politically relevant. It would be emergently political at that point. It could be innocent.
Wait.
Yeah, it could be innocent of politics. You don't have to be Bono and just like posture and do all that stupid shit. But you can just, be politically innocent and do what's important to you. And then people can, it can capture the zeitgeist, right? Without being overt about it.
I'll tell you a secret. I think early U2 is pretty good. When they didn't realize that they were U2.
Late U2 is so bad that I can't listen to early U2.
I can understand that, but early U2 is pretty good. When they were just Irish kids singing about things they were mad about.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, all right, I'm marking some things here. Page 220. This is 4 years earlier. They had gone to a fair or something, and there was a gypsy mummy. And the couple, you've seen these things in the glass. It's like a box, and the glass portion sat a dwarfish female figure attired in a gypsy costume, complete with garish jewelry and a colorful head scarf. Her gnarled, bony hands rested on her thighs, and the green of her fingernails looked less like polish than like mold. And you put the money in, and you get a card. And you ask for a fortune. So the couple before them says, Gypsy Mummy, tell us, will Johnny and I have a long and happy marriage? And they get a card that says, a cold wind blows, and each night seems to last 1,000 years. And they say, that can't be right. They put another quarter in. The fool leaps from a cliff, but the winter lake below is frozen. And they keep going. They keep getting cards. The orchard of blighted trees produces poisonous fruit. A stone can provide no nourishment, nor will sand slake your thirst. I would go to one of these and like stock it with cards like that. That would be great. So the first couple spends 4 more quarters trying to get the right answer, but it doesn't work, and they end up fighting. And then Stormy and Odd put their quarter in, and they get the card that says, "You are destined to be together forever." And Stormy thinks that the mummy winked. All right, so this is the thing that Odd is thinking the whole time, that they're destined to be together forever. And if you're just kind of casually reading this book, you think, well, yeah, they're going to be together forever. They're going to live happily ever after.
Well, that ain't wrong.
Right, but it's not right, but then it's right. Because they don't live happily ever after, because still bugs me, because she doesn't make it. I do this to people. I'm sorry about this book. So I did this to my wife. She read it. She thought it was great, but she was mad at the end or crying at the end. A girl at the gym back in Chicago asked me for book recommendations. I said, well, you might like Odd Thomas. And she came back mad at me. She's like, that book was so good. I'm so mad at you. Yeah, because, you're rooting for Stormy and Odd. But they, if what they believe is true, they are destined to be forever, together forever. If you, like them, are believers in something, you think that your love is not going to end when your spouse dies. It's just an interruption. If love is an eternal thing, it changes its quality. It becomes a different thing. You know what I mean? Rather than just, we're married, make me happy now. No, we're married. Our task is an eternal task.
Yes. You cannot make another person happy.
Maybe
You are not responsible for another's happiness.
No.
You can damn sure make them miserable, but you can't make them happy.
Well, you can help them do rational activity in accord with virtue.
Yeah, but that won't necessarily mean that they're going to be happy.
Right, but I don't really care about the feelings of happiness. I care about doing good action. What's the right thing to do?
I agree. But in current year, so many people are so broken that they cannot find even fleeting joy in that and do not recognize that for the good that it is. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I know. Yes, I know. That's why you got to read your Aristotle. I want to get more of a... This is in chapter 21. I'm sorry you're hearing me click in the background. I'm flipping through this book. She's warning him. So there was this room in Fungus Man's house that was completely black. You stick your arm through it and you couldn't see it. And it's a mysterious, weird thing. Plot device. And she's telling him, don't go back. It's the gate to hell. If you go looking for it and you find it, you'll wind up in hell. I'm not going to go down there looking for you and pull your ass out of the fire. Your warning is duly noted, says Odd. It's hard enough being married to a guy who sees dead people and goes chasing after them every day, and just too hard if he goes on some quest to find the gate to hell. I don't go chasing after them, I said. And since when are we married? We will be, she said, and finished her final fritter. He's been asking her to marry him since probably he met her, when they were 16. So on more than one occasion I've asked her to marry me, though we both agree that we're soulmates, we'll be together forever, she's always shied from my proposals. With something like, I love you madly, desperately, Oddie, so madly that I'd cut off my right hand for you if it made any sense as a proof of love. But as for this marriage thing, let's put a pin in it. Well, he says, so you mean you're accepting my proposal? Silly, I accepted it ages ago. Off my look of bewilderment, she said, "Oh, not with a conventional, 'Yes, darling, I'm yours,' but I accept it in so many words. I didn't interpret 'put a pin in it' as meaning yes. You have to learn to listen with more than your ears." I don't know. I love all this stuff. I love the dialogue. They're such a good fictional couple.
I actually wasn't that upset at her death, Karl. No, because
Did you predict it? Did you know it was coming?
No. I try not to predict that. You know, when I read a mystery, I'm not trying to figure it out. I just try to be swept along with them. I'm never like Agatha Christie, you know, she always does this thing where they reveal something that at the, you know, in the parlor at the big reveal, you know, the detective knew something that I didn't know, and then, you know, blah blah. I never cared because I just never try to figure it out. You know, even my beloved Sherlock Holmes stories, I never tried to figure them out. I just let the author just do it. And in fact, I had forgotten by the end of the book that in the beginning, Odd Thomas says, you know, I'm essentially doing this as therapy. You know, my friend Ozzy told me I needed to write that. I had forgotten about that until the end. When he calls back to those first paragraphs, I just let the story take me away. Anyways, at the end there, you find out that she was killed, and the whole time I'm thinking monster hunters, actually. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, I don't know how many of these darn stories there are, but if she gets killed or doesn't get killed, they got a lot of monsters to hunt, like, from now on. Like, I share her beliefs. So it didn't matter to me that much whether she got killed or not, actually.
Oh, it killed me. Devastated me. But you know, on my third time, it's probably my third time reading it. He gives you plenty of clues. The verb tense thing, I'm going to be an unreliable narrator. It's mostly verb tenses. Well, it's verb tenses about Stormy. He always talks about her in the present tense. Stormy is a woman of unconventional views. There's a big clue so there's this woman, Viola, who has her 2 children, and she's got this dream of death. There's going to be some kind of death. He knows this. He's got premonitions, and it's going to involve, he thinks it's going to be at the bowling alley because the guy that Viola sees next to her as she's dying in her dream has the bowling alley uniform on. Well, it turns out it's actually at the mall, and he'd gone to the mall, but he tells Viola and her girls, stay home. He says somewhere, the problem is, maybe I could save her, but then somebody else will have to die. Fate is sticky, you know? Well, I think right there, it's like, if he hadn't sent her home, maybe Stormy wouldn't get shot. And so, you know, I've read it 3 times. I can see all the foreshadowing. And what stuff's a pain? What is a pain in the ass?
I can't read anything because of current year. No, so come to find out, there are these cops, who are actually Satan worshipers, who are up to no good, and mass shootings,
Yeah, so Fungus Man has some accomplices. Fungus Man actually ends up dead. Shortly after Odd goes to visit his house, his accomplices kill him, stack the body, put the body in Odd's apartment. But who are the accomplices? And he does that mean if the big bad guy's gone, does that mean the bad thing's not going to happen? No, because you have to figure out who he was working with. And it turns out there were the 2 new cops. That's also a clue. The 2 new cops on the force are the ones that are planning to do it. They're going to shoot up people in the mall, and then in the panic, they're going to blow up the mall. They're going to try to get 500, 1,000 people. And they're doing it because when they were kids, they discovered devil worship and did their first murder, and it was fun. And plus, they're trying to subvert institutions. because one of the tenets of the Church of Satan is to try to pervert institutions. So they are believable bad guys.
Yeah, page 410, he says, they intended to murder the chief and parlay the mall disaster and a list of other complex and Machiavellian moves into firm control of the police department. Thereafter, the steady destruction of the town would be their sport and their form of worship. I'm like, yeah, checks out.
Yeah.
You know, fiction's not any fun anymore, Karl, because it's clown world. I can't hardly take it.
It's too much like real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for Dean Koontz, that's true for me. I mean, his plots recently have been very believable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still like the good guys. I like the secret network of right-minded people in the stories that help to
You bet.
keep the lights on and keep truth and goodness and beauty alive.
You bet.
There's a lot of horror show stuff around. If you just look around. And it'd be hard to write a novel that's going to shock people with the details of what the bad guys do. It's going to be, you're going to think, well, I read that in the paper last week.
I think he wrote this in 2005.
The Jane Hawk novels, yeah.
And
yeah,
it's not interesting now. I mean, it is. I enjoyed it, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. It's not awakening you to new possibilities of evil, no,
Mm-mm.
to guard against. The Jane Hawk novels, which is another series that he wrote, she's a FBI agent and her husband kills himself, or does he? And it turns out that, spoiler, okay, go read Jane Hawk and then come back, that there's this conspiracy, it's a mind control conspiracy to put nanowebs in your mind and control your behavior. And
I love it.
Seems realish, doesn't it?
I love it. Yeah. You know what I hate? Is people who aren't conspiratorially minded.
Yes.
Yeah.
How could you not be?
Right. Like, what? I don't understand. But, there are a lot of them out there, that don't see it after all of this, It's amazing.
Yeah. Should we get to the end?
I want to talk about Brittany and Dad.
Brittany. Yeah, mom and dad. So Odd Thomas's mom and dad. Which chapters are these?
I don't know. Is at 338 is where he describes Brittany a little bit. Let me see here if I can back up quickly. The chapter 51 is where he goes and sees his father. And then 52, I think, is where he goes and sees mom. He's having a hard time. Like, he figures out that he doesn't actually know who the bad guys are. He had been looking for the bad guys, and one of them turns up dead, and now he's confessed. He doesn't know what's going on, and he thinks, I'm going to go talk to mom, and I'm going to go talk to dad, and maybe that will, I don't know, not jog his memory, but jog his sixth sense somehow. And he goes to see his dad. His dad's this really vain guy about my age who has an 18-year-old concubine with him, Brittany. Mm-hmm. His dad is, like I say, vain. He's a trust fund kind of guy, and he's full of quick, rich schemes. He had just written a letter to, I think, the United Nations declaring the moon his property and was selling square feet of the moon to people. He's a lunatic. His kitchen was big with restaurant-quality equipment and every imaginary culinary tool and gadget, though he eats out 6 or 7 nights a week. Maple floor, ship-style maple cabinets with rounded corners, granite counters, and stainless steel appliances contribute to a sleek and yet inviting ambiance. Brittany is sleek as well, and inviting in a way that makes your skin crawl. When we entered the kitchen, she was standing hip-shot at a window, sipping a morning champagne and staring out at sun serpents, sinuously flexing across the surface of the swimming pool. Her thong bikini was small enough to excite the jaded editors of Hustler, but she wore it well enough to make the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. She was 18 but looked younger. This is very interesting to me.
Meanwhile, some cool description in there. Hip shot.
Yeah.
She was standing hip shot at a window.
Get that?
Is that contrapposto?
That's exactly what I was going to say. No, she's got her hip. She got a hip shot out, as opposed to. I don't think it's contrapposto.
It's like an Instagram pose.
Yeah, that's right.
For all the Instagram ladies, they never just stand.
No.
And then the sun serpents. I'm trying to imagine what those are. Sun serpents sinuously flexing across the surface of the swimming pool. Like when you see a pool, there'll be the glimmer of the sunlight reflecting off of it can look like a snake.
I like how he juxtaposes the Hustler and the Sports Illustrated swimsuit thing. It seems to me, Karl,
why?
It seems to me that this will make somebody mad, but whatever. It's not a show if I haven't made somebody mad. It seems to me that if a young woman, I won't even say young, if a woman is healthful enough and beautiful enough and symmetrical enough, then her being unclad approaches like the David. There's like, they end up being, there's something wholesome about it, right? The more gorgeous they are, the less sexual it actually is when they're not clad. Somehow. Because they're like just displaying this ideal form almost. But then you get a 6 that's wearing a thong and you're like, good Lord, that's lewd as hell. There's something about it that's different. Somebody's not going to like me saying that, but it seems different. It seems different. They're displaying something, whether they know it or not, they are displaying something different. Cindy Crawford in wearing an eye patch over her pubis versus some chick that's a 7 wearing it. They are displaying two different things, whether they're aware of it or not. Or maybe I'm perceiving two different things. Right? One of them, it's like I say, it's like a platonic form, and the other one, it's like disinhibition or something else. Right? I don't know, but it's different, and he's hinting at it with that paragraph there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It might be a bit in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
The artistic nude. It's not really lewd. I mean, it can be, but
yeah. So it isn't. Maybe I'll accept that. Maybe it's in the eye of the beholder, but something is being beheld.
Yes.
Yeah, and when the 283 chick falls out with the slingshot on, I can't behold a platonic form. Can't. Because it's not there to be held. Yeah. So,
well, no, I mean, the point of it, when you look at the telos of it, the point of fine art is beauty. The point of pornography is lust.
Mm-hmm.
You could be referring to that, although Sports Illustrated these days.
Yeah. Even the heavier girls in Sports Illustrated, my gosh, they're beautiful girls. It won't be long, and they're going to have somebody with like a head injury with like a misshapen face in there. Like they're not going to leave it alone.
No, they haven't.
Hunter McGrady and Ashley Graham are beautiful chicks. There's just a lot of them. But then he goes on, he talks about Brittany, page 338. I know this girl. She didn't stir in me the slightest anger. She saddened me, for I could see her deeply unhappy future without any need of any sixth sense. Admittedly, she scared me a little too, because she was moody to anger. Here we go. Worse, the purity and the intensity of her self-esteem ensured that she would never doubt herself, that she could not conceive of suffering unpleasant consequences for any act that she might commit. The exquisite narcissist.
Yep, I've known her. I've known Brittany.
Yep. Hey, I've had some clients like that at Online Great Books.
Yeah, everything wrong is somebody else.
Yeah, and they're immiserating. They make everybody around them miserable, and they're just completely unaware of it. Like, I'm a delight. I'm a delight. Why wouldn't you want me to be here?
Well, you're on your third seminar, and
I've had 11 emails from you in 120 days, giving me advices on how to run the thing. In my fifth year of it, and yeah, you make me miserable. Luckily, the English language changes and morphs, and we can come up with new words, to meet linguistic needs, Karl. And we've got this Brittany here. She's a Karen in the making. Actually, she's worse than
if she makes it that far.
Yeah, she's worse than that. But
yeah, so Dad is no help.
The intensity of her self-esteem ensured that she would never doubt herself. Our culture has now emphasized creating self-esteem in people, in our peers, our fellow citizens.
Yep.
And one of my good friends, who is a tragic figure, he had drug and alcohol addiction problems and went to the big house for a number of years. Got out and worked the 12 steps and was an AA and an NA sponsor for many, many years. He did 7 meetings a week for decades, and the wheels came off. And I'm not sure he's alive. After many years of being sober, it all fell apart for him. But he used to talk about stuff like this, about self-esteem. And, these 12-step people that are successful, and even the ones that aren't successful, do a lot of introspection, a lot of work around this stuff, and they've got interesting things to say about it. And we used to talk about this, and he would say to have proper self-esteem, you have to do esteemable things.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone like this, Brittany, it's difficult for all of us to do esteemable things sometimes. Odd Thomas finds a dead man that has thousands of dollars on his person in cash money, and he takes the wallet because he needs the clues within the wallet, but leaves the money. That's hard to do if you've got student loans.
Mm-hmm. Well, he doesn't. He's a fry cook.
Well, right. But you understand what I mean. Like, so sometimes it's hard to do esteemable things. It is almost impossible if you're piping hot like Brittany. Those people are infantilized all the time. Oh, let me get that door for you. I'll carry that. Oh, I'll help you with your English paper, which means write it for you in hopes that maybe you'll go out on a date. Like, it's even more difficult for somebody like her to do the esteemable.
Yeah, I think the whole focus on esteem or pride, it's backwards. It's a deadly sin. Okay, so yeah, 7 deadly sins, this old Catholic thing that Karl's trotting out. Well, they weren't morons when they came up with the list. Okay.
Of course. Yeah, so you're not a Catholic, so you're not a Christian. Is sloth okay? Is greed okay? Come on.
Gluttony is just fine. Right?
Oh, I don't believe in your sky friend. Okay, fine. All right. What about envy? Is that all right? Gluttony's okay? Dummies.
Well, apparently it is. Apparently it is. We've been kind of doing a project to go through the 7 deadly sins and make them not. So pride, it's probably not good if you don't have, it's not going to be good if you don't have self-love. If you do not love yourself, it's going to be bad. Well, how do we solve this? Do you just magically, performatively utter the words, I love myself, and then that makes you love yourself? Or do you figure out something to do that's lovable? I think the second approach is better. That might be a bootstrap problem. How do I get myself to do the good act that is worth esteeming when I feel so terrible about myself? Yeah, I can see that, but
there are certainly people
it's not an invocation. It's not a magic trick.
No. There are certainly people that have unnecessary, unwarranted, negative self-talk. I suck. They need to stop that, unless you really do suck. If you're not sure if you suck or not, send me an email. I'll let you know. Describe yourself and all your actions, and I'll let you know if you suck or not. But the negative self-talk stuff is a problem among people too. Back to the thing here at the beginning where I'm so pleased with Koontz writing normal people with care and reverence, or care. Not that he's a careful writer, like he cares about him, and he makes you want to care about just a fry cook and a girl that dips ice cream. That's wonderful. And the reason it's wonderful, there are a lot of reasons, but the thing that's so delightful about it is you just don't see it very much. So we end up with, there's Brittany, who is incredibly gifted in terms of beauty. And then you have other people who ain't like that. They don't have these gifts, and they're just normal people. And we have these narcissists flung on us all the time. They're always extroverts. They're always louder than everybody else. They're always, there's a center of attention, whether anybody likes it or not. They're everywhere. And then there are these just normal people just trying to have a life and make good pancakes. And they should find esteem in that. But they're told all the time they shouldn't. They're
told they shouldn't. And the ones that get esteemed are, it's the curse of social media that encourages you to declare your own worth, but only in superficial terms. You could see this on TikTok, God forbid if you're on TikTok, but you're encouraged to say how wonderful everything is and how wonderful you are, and to present that to other people and attempt to get likes to validate that you are in fact wonderful. Yeah, it's poisonous. You'd be better off going and digging a ditch, because then you could get to the end and say, look, I dug a ditch. Digging a ditch equals 500 Instagram likes. Or maybe infinity Instagram likes. Yeah. So, Brittany's a piece of work. Dad's a piece of work. He doesn't help. You see, Odd thinks he's getting married in 3 days. And the dad says, well, we can't make it. We have a commitment we can't break.
Yeah. And Brittany calls him a freak.
Yep.
Brittany calls him a freak. Brittany is normal people. There aren't a lot of normal people, current year people, in this book. She might be the only one. Yeah, like he's got this friend.
But she rings very true.
Yeah, he's got this friend. What's her name? Is it Pearl? And she has the 2 daughters, and he goes over there and tells them, don't go to the movie theater. He wants to help them.
That's Viola.
Viola. Yeah, it's his grandma's Pearl. There are the other people that work at the diner. They're just regular Joes that you don't see in normal stories, now normally. Brittany and her dad are the modern people in this story, other than the 3 killers.
Brittany and her sugar daddy.
Her sugar daddy.
Yeah, the mom's a piece of work too. I don't know if you want to talk about her.
Is she...
Odd's mom.
Is she old Brittany? In fact, he says that even though that she's 41 years old and Brittany's 18, that almost anybody would choose the mom in her yellow sundress on that day. Of course, when she was 18, that was right up Odd's dad's alley, and he ends up, having Odd by her. She targeted the dad. Like, the dad had a trust fund, and she knew it. And she ended up having the son, which she didn't want. And she says some of the most horrific things that you could even imagine about the fact that she carried this parasite, this rotten baby in her, and she was filled with like dead baby pus and like just these terrible images that she carried in her mind about carrying a child. But she did it so that she could get that child support and that alimony and never engage with the world ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't. She got the house in the divorce. She never remarried. She gets an alimony payment. She's so horrific. She's such an emotional terrorist that her dad, in all of his narcissism, will not confront her and has not done anything to fight the continual welfare payment that she's been on for all these years. Yeah, is she old Brittany? Yes, I think.
So he goes to see her. This is because Fungus Man had a bullet wound, and there was something about the wound that he couldn't remember, that he couldn't see, because he has this thing with guns. And the reason he has the thing with guns is a fear of guns. Some fear of guns is rational. He has more than is rational, because his mother would threaten to kill herself all the time in his presence and tell him to pull the trigger. And he's gone over to her to try to work through that and be able to figure out the clue. But I don't know, it's an excuse to talk about the end road of narcissism, I think.
Yeah. Her favorite rose is the John F. Kennedy. Well, he shot him in the head,
Yep.
Blew his brains out, she said. And he says, Mother, I said, though I seldom use that word in conversation with her, this is different. You've got to help me this time. People will die if you don't. This is perhaps the worst thing I could have said. She didn't possess the emotional capacity to assume responsibility for the lives of others. She freaks out, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to find some of these terrible things that she would say. Yeah, but she runs away, and then she comes back out of the house with her gun. She holds it to her head. She holds it like over her heart, like she's going to kill herself. And she tells him to either stop sucking my blood or pull the trigger, you little shit. Just absolutely horrific. I should have scraped you out of me and thrown you in the garbage. But what would I have gotten from the divorce then? You were the ticket.
Yep. Yeah, the bad guys seem understandable.
I cursed the night I let your idiot father squirt into me. Yeah, and like I've been watching the news. Here it is, July 7th. I've been watching the news. Yeah, and all this talk about should have scraped you out of me, all that stuff, it's unbelievable. Well, except it's not believable. It's in the news all the time.
I don't know that they were necessary to the plot, Mom and Dad.
I thought you were dead inside me, dead and rotting. Month after unending month, I felt your rotting fetus festering in my belly, spreading poison throughout my body, she says to him. I think it does. I think it needs to be here because you see how well-intentioned and how good he is in spite of that, right? The modern story, the modern story is bad things happen to you with the kid when you're a kid, and now you have no agency, and you will act out that in the world. That's the modern story, right? Any other modern story, this happens to a kid. Now he's the mall shooter,
right? Okay.
So this happens to him, and it happens to his girlfriend. Like she's molested in a foster home. They are the good guys. They are not the mall shooters. They can transcend it. They are not their experiences. They are.
I see it.
Yeah. They are themselves. They are not their experiences. They are not the sum of what has happened to them.
He ends that paragraph. Given my heritage and the ordeal of my childhood, I sometimes wonder why I myself am not insane. Maybe I am. Well, you could have taken this novel in another way and said, well, he doesn't really see dead people and he's actually crazy. And
hey, even if he doesn't see dead people and he's crazy, he stops them all shooting.
Yeah.
Not before 19 are killed, but they had a bomb under the building. Like they drove, the freight tunnel. All malls have a drive-through underground freight entrance. I don't know about all, but just virtually all of them. I used to deliver computer paper to Dillard's, and I would have to drive down under Woodland Hills Mall and back up to the dock and whatever. So the bad guys have a U-Haul truck like Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma City, full of explosives, and they park it under the big anchor department store in this mall, and they are going to blow that sucker completely away. So they have 2 active shooters in the mall, plus a bomb under the thing. The 2 active shooters in the mall are wearing coveralls under which they have their police uniforms on. Their plan is to shoot the place up, retreat somewhere, get rid of the coveralls, come out as cops, blend back in, probably pose as heroes. He didn't say that. In the aftermath of the thing, somehow, meanwhile, the thing blows up.
Yeah.
But bad things happen to Odd Thomas. Bad things happen to Stormy, but they don't do bad things. They don't have to. Yeah. Oh, my goodness gracious. What was the book we read about? Triumph of the Therapeutic.
Yeah.
Modern psychology doesn't, by and large, does not demand a transcendence of circumstance of its patient. And
no, it's just how to do better in the situation you're in, how to be more at peace with the situation you're in.
How to be more at peace with it. Philosophy matters. People who don't read philosophy and don't care about it are actually influenced by it. People, almost nobody's read Freud. I mean, there's, close to 8 billion people walking the earth, and however many have read him, not very many, But the ideas get out there, man. It's like Pandora's box is real. Like if you open the box and one of these ideas flies out of there like a bodock, it's going to infect people. And it has, this Triumph of the Therapeutic. Go read that book. Go read that one and After Virtue. Between the two of them, you won't look at the modern world the same anymore.
Right.
Koontz does not embrace that theory of mind and theory of psychology. In fact, he doesn't say that the shooters, he's like, oh, well, this shooter, his dad put cigarettes out on him, and this one's a minority, and in this situation, none of that. Like, there's no background at all except that they were fucking around with Satanism, and then they want to harm people.
Yeah, and they found it fun. There is such a thing as malice. I want to talk about the ending.
Well, they found it fun. You're right. He says they found it fun, but he also says that it was a form of worship for them.
Yeah.
And so I believe, whether people realize it or not, they can find themselves in a situation where they are worshiping this disorder, whether they personify it as like Satanism or have a spiritual system around it. There is a kind of a de facto worship of disorder.
Koontzian bad guys.
Go ahead.
Koontzian bad guys tend, I'm making up a word there, they tend to have a mystical aspect to it. They're not just stealing money. They're stealing money for the service of the Brotherhood, which is also engaged in doing other worse things. There's always a deeper level. Yeah, it's not random violence. It's violence at the service of the evil.
Mm-hmm. If I write oh my gosh, what's the guy's name that wrote Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs? Let's say I write Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, the Hannibal Lecter books.
Yeah, let's say I write Silence of the Lambs, which was a book before it was a movie. Am I going to give background on Hannibal Lecter and try to explain it away? Right? I think that there's. I read those stories. I read those back when I was reading the Stephen King stuff. Shouldn't have read it. Something bad happened to Hannibal Lecter when he was a kid. I don't remember what it was. And Buffalo Bill, something happened. Right? It's explicable in that way in these modern stories. or explicable. They explain it away, right? They give him a blank check.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this now. I like the way you've talked about this. So Harlow, the first murderer that you meet in the book, he's described. He's just this kid from the school that has this fancy car that he loves, and quiet kid, and well, at some point he made the choice to indulge in the murder and rape of Penny Callisto. So you're reading and you think, well, they're going to explain it away, and he doesn't. What happened to Harlow? How did he go from being the quiet kid with the cool car that he'd worked on to the murderer? And so I think you're probably right about that to compare that with Stormy and Aude, who have horrible childhoods and do not choose the bad, and then the cops and Bob Robertson, the fungus man, who have their childhoods are fine and they choose the evil because of malice. Because so Augustine, in chapter 6 of the Confessions, he steals a pear, and he's wondering, of all the sins he committed, apparently he fornicated in a church. He writes somewhat delicately about that, but he doesn't talk about that sin as being the big sin. Maybe he didn't fornicate, but he arranged a fornication in church, and he feels bad about that later. But the pear thing really bugs him, because when he was with buddies, they stole pears from a tree. They didn't eat them. They threw them to the pigs. The fornication would have been understandable, desires and all of that. The stealing of the pears, it's not understandable because you didn't even want the pears. They weren't good pears. You were not satisfying a desire. You were doing it just because it's wrong. Just because it's forbidden. And he has this wonderful line. He said something about how it's actually imitation of God. That the reason that you do evil is so that you can be the Lord and Master. And so he doesn't say it's a satanic temptation, but you could read that into it. That the commandment says you shall not steal. Well, you're not the boss of me. There's no content to that. You're not stealing a thing that you like. What do the murderers get out of the mall shooting except the joy of godhood, of being the one that sets the rules? That kind of evil doesn't make sense.
So the modern writer is like, well, his dad put cigarettes out on him, and his mom was a prostitute, and blah, 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 blah. And now he's a serial killer, right? There's no free will in it for him.
Yeah.
Most of the world now, again, people don't most people don't overtly think about philosophy or theology or the nature of these evil acts like Augustine does in the book you were referring to there. But most of the world now is actually materialist, and they don't believe in free will. The man is the sum of all of his parts. His pH is this, his biochemistry is X, and so then therefore he's he typically votes left wing. Well, whatever, right? They actually talk about like these people have these predetermined, psychological characteristics that tend to make people left wing or right wing. They talk about this kind of thing. And then they also say, well, they had childhood trauma, and blah, blah, blah. So now, of course he was a serial killer. Now, there are a few inconsistencies there. There are a few inconsistencies in the modern mind about, the nature of the soul and the materialism and all that stuff. But typically in trannies, right? They're like, oh, well, you were born with a ding dong, but your soul doesn't have a ding dong. So, we got to go make the material match the soul, But other than that, they mostly don't believe in free will.
Yeah, but that's a particularly odd case because it requires you to suppose that there is such a thing as a soul. And it doesn't match with materialism. How can you not be what your body says you are? Well, you have to presume that there's something that's not my body, that's me.
But that's the claim. They almost never think about it that far. Like, oh, You believe in an immutable soul that's separate of the material of the body then. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the hardest thing is to match up evil as a privation with evil as malice. At some point, it doesn't make any sense. At some point, you choose something that is irrational. So evil as privation, I think, is kind of like the economic theory of evil. You know, it's a lack that shouldn't be there. And I get it. I think it's mostly right, but you know, that kid stealing those pears for no reason at all, except that it was forbidden. I'm not sure how to map that onto a lack.
Well, yeah, it's difficult. I hear you. I'm with you. It's certainly a repeated choosing and turning away from the good. So you know, you're reading book 1 of the Little Summa from Aquinas. You know, he shows you that there isn't a bad to turn to. Like, you can't. Okay, you come to a fork in the road. One's good, one's bad. He's like, no, there's not a bad one. It's not a metaphysical thing. This evil is not a metaphysical thing, and here's why. And he goes through this long, long proof about, you know, why the good is what is, and that, you know, when you turn away from, you know, what is and what is proper, then you actually run afoul reality. And us being humans and being all screwed up like we are, we see when someone runs afoul reality, we have to put a word on it. So we're like, oh, okay, well, that's evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know that the listener's probably like, what does that really mean? You know?
Well, for physical evil, it's really, really easy. You know, I have a wound on my hand from some rafting I did, and it's a place where there is no skin. It is a lack that should be there. So for a lot of it, this makes sense. You know, the pothole is not really a thing. The pothole is the lack of thing where it should be. You know, there needs to be pavement there, and there's not. And you could even say, like, defects of the passions, giving into the passions, you could map that as self-control, a lack of self-control that I should have. I get that. It works really well for all of that. Where it doesn't, I'm willing to accept that it works. I'm sure Thomas has an explanation for it. But where I have a hard time is torturing cats or something. Littering. We've talked about that before. Littering should have more penalty because there's no reason to do it. It's, screw you, world, I'm going to fling my garbage out. Right, so it's harder to map that into just a lack of something, except a lack of, well, it's pride, you know, and pride is thinking that you're great when you're not, but it's not an intellectual mistake. It's choosing to assert yourself improperly. It does not make rational sense.
Yeah, it's a choosing to assert yourself. Yeah, maybe. The littering is certainly a rejection of order. The torturing cats thing is that one's a more difficult one for me.
Yeah. So if I'm eating at the lake and the wind picks up my hamburger wrapper, is that death penalty, or do I get to appeal?
No, you get to appeal. We have to show. You know, I'm gonna have to come up with a word like manslaughter. Like, you definitely littered, but you didn't intend to. Like, that guy's definitely dead, but you know, you didn't try to kill him. It was, you know, you didn't secure the load on your trailer properly, and the pipe fell off and killed the guy. You didn't secure your hamburger wrapper properly. So there's still a penalty.
Right. You have to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, don't just let it fly. So after the killings at the mall, Koontz plays this dirty trick. He has, spoiler. This is an enormous spoiler. Chapter 63, Odd wakes up in the hospital. He's had a dream that he and Stormy have moved on from boot camp, which is this life, to the next life. But he wakes up and Well, Stormy comes into the ICU. Well, there's 3 chapters of this. Other people are coming and they're crying, but he's with Stormy, so he's all right. He gets out of the hospital. He goes to her apartment, and they just live there for a while, and everything's happy. He doesn't answer the phone. They don't do anything. They're not, they are chaste as unmarried people should be. They just cuddle and kiss, but they don't go any further, and they're with each other for the long time, for 5 days, I think. And finally you find out that, well, of course, she's been dead the whole time. And he's been with her ghost. And this is when people hate me for recommending the book. When they get to the big reveal on page 414.
Yeah, you're a dick.
Sorry.
I suspected as much, and like I said, I'm not too concerned because I believe in the world of Odd Thomas, having not read the other 7 books and all the essays or all the other short stories or whatever, that they're probably going to keep working together. At the end of the story, she walks on, like she goes wherever they go. Elvis hasn't, right? Elvis hasn't, but at the end of the story, she turns on a heel and walks away and looks over her shoulder or whatever, but then she fades out like she's crossed over or whatever stupid stuff you want to say. There is no way we're here and put up with all of this stuff and try to find a way to deal with it and leave the woodpile taller than we found it and be magnanimous and have some sort of serenity about us, only to die and just float around on a cloud and play a harp. I don't buy it a bit. There's got to be a second boss. There's another boss at the end of this.
Yeah, your particular theories of the afterlife are what I first encountered in Stormy Llewellyn in this novel.
Yeah. What are you going to do? You're going to, let's just posit that there's an afterlife, listener. Just go with me. So what? There's an afterlife, and maybe you have some. You're not omniscient, but you have extra knowledge, right? You have knowledge of the people that you left behind, and you have knowledge that the earth existed, and now you're somewhere else. What? So now you have no concern for that? That's the end. You're done. Like your grandma, and you die, and your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids are still there, and not your concern. Just harp songs? No way.
Well, how is one to know such things?
Right. No, it's more and uglier and higher stakes battles. Has to be. It's the only thing that would give it any real meaning. And no, it's not the only thing, but that I think that's part of the beatific vision is to be part of the whole thing more.
Your ideas are similar to the ending of C.S. Lewis' Narnia series.
Yeah.
When they just keep going on to more and more.
Bigger bosses. Evil Mario Brothers.
Evil Mario Brothers. Yeah. So anyway, it's one of my favorites. Dean Koontz is. I always look forward to reading one of his novels. He plays dirty tricks on you, but the good guys are good. The bad guys are bad. I don't know. He's 76. How many more is he going to write? Probably another 50.
Well, he's writing 8 a year, 2 a quarter.
So I recommend. So Karl recommends these. So you can go and read more of his stuff if you like. What are we going to read next? Since I've given the last 2, that's up to you.
We could read the Hualabec piece, the H.P. Lovecraft Memoirs of a Superfluous Man by Knock, Killer Angels, the Gettysburg historical novel, whatever you want. We've also got this. I threw this Dorothy Sayers essay, "Why Work," from her thing, Letters to the Diminished Church of 1942.
I don't know. Just pick one.
Oh my gosh!
I will use your finger.
Okay.
Just walk it
well,
down
let's
the
read
list.
the Hualabec Elementary Particles. It's going to be awful.
Is this a 1,000-page one? Are you throwing Lord of the Rings at me?
No.
Is this
No. You're not supposed to read it. See? You're not supposed to read it.
It's one of those.
Yeah, it's one of those. Since everything's so F and G, you got to read the stuff that you're not supposed to read because everything's so, clown world now,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and people are like, me being who I am, they're like, have you read the Ray Dalio? No, I'm not going to either. I'm not going to read that because I'm supposed to. It can't be any good.
If they want you to read it.
Right. It's not going to be any good. I mean, if you told me to read it, maybe. I'll think about it. Now, if you told me to read it, I'd read it. But like if somebody just emails me like, oh, have you read the Ray Dalio thing about... No, I'm not going to read it. 272 pages in this. Michel Houellebecq, The Elementary Particles.
All right. I get it.
272. Yeah.
Do I have to go on to bootleg what places to find it? Is it that forbidden?
No, it's not that forbidden. It's not Camp of Saints forbidden. But it's forbidden. We should read Camp of Saints. Have you looked at that thing?
No.
Yeah.
Did I brag about my potatoes?
Not enough. So you did about 10% and you got what, 20 pounds? 10 pounds. What do you think?
Oh, probably 15. I haven't weighed it.
All right. So we're looking at...
I don't even know if it's 10% because it's hard digging today because everything's dry.
It is.
And really hot. So I went and did it maybe an hour and a half of digging and that was enough. So I'll get up at 5 tomorrow and do some more. They'll keep in the dirt for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So almost as many as I put in seed potatoes just from today.
Excellent.
I could be happy with potatoes.
That's good.
It's my heritage, you see. It's the Irish part.
Right. Yeah. The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. Have you read, Scott, have you considered reading? No.
Maybe I'll just read a whole bunch of Dean Koontz for a while.
You could do worse. I've been reading a lot of gardening stuff. Jean-Martin Fortier, Elliot Coleman, these like organic market gardeners. I've been reading a bunch of that. Really enjoying that. Gosh, that makes so much sense, that method that those guys use. Working on it. Everything's so expensive, Karl. Yep. I'm just heartbroken about it. Like putting a deer fence around my little orchard,
Infinity dollars. Yeah, up in Illinois, gas is $5.97.
Credit card debt's going up. They're doing it on credit. Apparently, most people are. My biggest fear, though, is that we kick the economic can down the road some more. We in 2008, 2009, we kicked it down the road and keep kicking that can, doing the bailouts and printing the money and kicking the can. And that's my biggest fear, is that we kick this can some more. I want to rip the bandage off. And again, like my buddy that told me about self-esteem coming from doing esteemable things. He says, to get where you're going, you got to get where you're going.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only way through is back.
Right. Something like that. Yeah. So I really worry about kicking the can on this. I'm not a boomer. As long as it sticks together, as long as I'm around. No. If it hits the fan the day after I die, that's not good. I want my kids I want it to get where it's going so that my children can learn to be adults in that environment. Right? Because learning how to do this 10 years ago means go to school, get the debt, buy the mortgage, get the debt, do the thing, go to the cubicle, blah, blah, blah. And I believe that that's not going to work anymore. So if it's not going to work anymore, let's break the machine and we'll learn how to live with the new machine. Let's figure out the new machine.
Yeah, I was having a discussion with a friend the other day. We were talking about ways of life and she's one of us. She just hasn't done OGB. Similar outlook, but we're talking about the way that a way of life would be good is if you can envision it going on for 1,000 years. could you and your descendants do this for 1,000 years and it would be okay? I think that's a good test, but I can't imagine doing what we're doing now going on for another 1 year.
There are people, though, that believe technology and engineering know-how will solve problems. And, it's the whole progressive thing, They take it.
How's this for a nightmare?
They take it as an article of faith.
How's this for a nightmare? They crack fusion. And now the administrative state has unlimited power to dole out to you.
Like literally unlimited energy power to make and manufacture more and more efficient boots to crush you with.
Right, because scarcity creates character. What does abundance create?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah. So
those are happy thoughts to end with.
My worst fear now is that that this is going to get fixed. West Texas Intermediate crude dropped under 100 the other day. I'm like, no, no.
Now, if they came up with Mr. Fusion, like from Back to the Future, where you could have your own independent source of power, well, that might be okay. But, the big fusion reactor on the ocean, where it's doled out to you.
The acorn-sized reactors to fuel your household appliances, like in that last book we read. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I was talking about Back to the Future, but he has a Mr. Fusion machine, like you have a Mr. Coffee.
Yeah, puts his garbage in the DeLorean
and you get fusion out of it. That might be okay. But having it, will give you power in proportion to your social credit score. Mm. That's a horror story. That'll be in the next Dean Koontz novel.
Mm. He might have already written it. You've only read a half of a million. He's written 1 million.
I feel like they're the kind of novels I would write if I were good enough at writing to write novels.
Could be.
I was wondering, you said if W.S. Hambrick had written 300 novels. I want to know what those 300 novels are. What are some of the titles?
Gosh, I don't even know. I can't even improv on it right now. I'm so put off by everything. So I would like to think that I would write something like Wendell Berry stuff. I don't have that kind of talent or whatever, but just knowing the kind of people I know and the kind of world I live in. I don't live in Port William, but I would like to think I could write that. I certainly would want to be able to write something like that. And I don't think that I would write. I don't think I have stories in me that would go beyond that kind of a plot. Like Jayber Crow doesn't really have much of a plot. I mean, it's the love between him and Maddie, and him trying to find ways to love everyone. But it's just a lifetime of vignettes, that kind of point at these couple of themes. I would like to think that I could do that, because I'm not going to write a thriller. I'm not going to write a mystery. Not going to write a Western, But I don't know. It'd be, pedestrian. Wendell Berry's books are pedestrian. It's just people being people.
Yeah, I think I'd do thrillers or Space Marines. I couldn't do Space Marines because never having served in any military, I would get the jargon mixed up. So I guess it's thrillers for me.
Now you have to do your own world building, like George R. So, you don't know anything. So you just create something that's entirely like a fiction. I mean, entirely a fiction. Because you don't know anything. Like the only way that you can demonstrate any competency is just to imagine something that doesn't even exist. And then put yourself as like the god of that. That's the Gamma way.
All right.
So I was telling you on the phone, and then you drove through like Nebraska or something, and I got cut off. That a neighbor man invited me to the fish fry. And I went. Wife and I went, and there was, I don't know, 40, 45, 50 people there. There was a 2-month-old baby there, up to some woman that looked like she was 1,000 years old, and everybody in between. And everybody had a good time. There was no music. There's sort of no unnecessary noise. People sitting around, visiting, moving around, talk to this group, move over there and talk to that group. There was some beer there. Nobody drank too much. Everybody had a great time. Karl, it was like 1988. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what is happening?
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, nobody got in a fist fight. I'll tell you something else. This will make it. There weren't any fat people. I mean, people were just like.
It really is like 1988.
Yeah, they were just like, everybody was like over, a 6 or better. I mean, there weren't any 9s, but everybody just was like put together, and they knew they were going over to somebody's house. There were going to be other people there, and they maybe put on a little bit better shirt, and like nobody was showing off. Nobody was ostentatious, but everybody was just kind of put together, and good Lord, it was perfect.
What does happiness look like? It kind of looks like that.
Yeah. We went to bed before they popped any fireworks off. I was tired. We had a good time, but we didn't stay. He's like, "You're leaving? We're going to do that in about 20 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going home, Yeah, it was good. 300-foot long slip and slide, Karl.
Wow. Did you slip and slide?
I did not, but all the kids were doing. They were. Anytime there's something like that, one of the adults has to say, "Boy, those kids are going to sleep good tonight." Those kids are sliding down there and running back up the hill. It was good. Anyway, we'll read The Elementary Particles, all 270 pages of it for the next show, and then Music and Ideas show. We've got one hanging fire. We're going to be recording one on musical theater soon. God help us all. All right. Hey, thank you guys so much for listening. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast and get on our mailing list. Please do that. And even if you're not going to do that, you probably ought to read some of these things. You really, 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 really need to read the Iliad. If you don't do anything else, here's my list. Read the Iliad. Read Prometheus Bound. Read the Meno, Gorgias, Timaeus, Theaetetus, the Apology. Well, the 3 death dialogues of Plato.
Apology, Phaedo, Credo.
Yes. And the Republic. And then you'll be ready most ways to go get yourself some Aristotle. If you wanted me to put this in the show notes, tough shit, I won't do it. You can play it back and write it down. But get yourself a group together and start reading a few of these things. It'll be worth it. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Then when you're ready to grow your group a little bit and move beyond those things I've already mentioned, I think, add to this or argue with me about it, Karl, I think you got to read Herodotus. I think you've got to read Thucydides. And then from there, you can probably go get into Aristotle. The order you read Aristotle in doesn't really matter that much because it's always the wrong order.
I don't argue with any of these things. We do them in an order because time is real and we have to do subsequent events. So we start with the Iliad. You're reading one by one. And I just give you this warning. Lots of people get annoyed with Socrates. And they, who is this guy? Why is he being so annoying? Well, if you could read Thucydides at the same time as you read Plato, that might help to realize they've been at war. This is not just happy golden age Athens with, a golden hour light shining on it. It's a city at war doing good things and bad things and terrible mistakes and plague. And Socrates is not just walking up to gentlemen and annoying them. He's not just saying, no, there was no golden age in Athens. It was on fire the whole time.
High stakes. Yeah. I think you need to read the things I mentioned in the order I mentioned them in. You don't have to. I mean, of course. But when you get to Aristotle, as long as you're reading Aristotle, you're in the right order because it's just terrible. Like you don't start to grok your Aristotle until you've read almost all of it. And then you got to start over, but it's worth it. But I highly recommend
The must in Aristotle is, for me, is Nicomachean Ethics. But probably to understand what he's talking about, you also need to read all the other stuff. But Nicomachean Ethics is, it'll be things that are surprising to you. You have never thought of things in quite that way.
Yeah, if you're only going to read 2 Aristotles, it has to be that in politics. And then once you've done with those, if you're not on fire to go get the rest of it, then I can't help you, and you're not my kind of guy anyway. So, whatever. Yeah, go do that. Yeah, you don't have to do it with us. And for all you cheap bastards that aren't and won't, get a group together and do it. You need, I'm going to say you need 4 people, you plus 3, plus as many as maybe 8 when you do it in person. And you'll have a good quorum and you can get it going. So do it. Time's a wasting, and the stakes are going up. And the books aren't just things you read because they're interesting and smart. I think they have real live implications for life in the future and the future. All right, get to reading, all y'all. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.